So here's an example of objects. We have a public class which we'll call geometry. Again, this will be in the geometry.java file. And it starts with our main method. And the first thing it does is it basically calls the square object. It creates a square object, where we define the variable s of type square. Again, here is our new keyword to allocate the memory and the call then to the constructor. So what this does is this looks at the square class and says, I will basically create a memory object that has two variables, length and width, or two integer variables more specifically. Each are 32 bits. It will then come back here and say, okay, we can now use the variable s to refer to that object in memory. In this case, it says set length equals 6, or set length 6. So you'll see lines 21 through 23. Here's the set length method. It returns nothing, takes in a single parameter. And so what happens is that the 6 goes into L goes into length, and so since we're using the S object, the s.length, or the length within the S object, will be 6. Had we done another one here, which I'll write here for you, we do square s2 equals new square. Again, creating the constructor. I could then do another one that says s2.setLength equal, let's say, 8. And so in this case, if we call setLength, because we're referring to the s2 object, we're referring to a different location in memory, and therefore we're ultimately referring to a different length variable. When we come down to line 10 here, we have the set width equals 4. So the 4 goes into the W. That 4, which is in the W, will go into the width of the S object. And then I can call two methods directly. System.out.println, the area of the square is s.area. Now, s.area, again, we're calling the area method of the s object. So since s is a square, I look in the square class for the area method. And then it will basically return an integer. So the return type is an integer. Since length and width are both integers and we're doing a mathematical operation of integers, the result will also be an integer type. We return the length times the width, and that value is what gets replaced here, and thus the area of the square will be the value of the length times the width. On line 12, we then make a similar call to s.perimeter, in which case perimeter returns an integer, takes in no parameters, and it returns 2 times length and plus 2 times width, which we can then see that this will be an integer, and the value will then get returned over here in line 12. Again, since we are using the S object and not the S2 object, we're referring to the numbers defined by 6 and 4. Once we're done, we end this square class with a brace. Each one of the methods has been closed with their appropriate braces, and the square class has been closed. The comment at the end just helps you understand where the end of the class actually is. And again, I can put this in a single file, but the file must be called geometry.java because the name of the file must be the same name as the public class. They could also be in separate files. They can be in separate directories, but that gets a little bit more involved. So for now, we'll just put them in the same file so that you have them available. When you compile this, you will notice that the geometry class, and if you look at the directory, you will have a geometry class file. And this will also create a separate class file which will be called square.class. And it is that allows you to start creating the modularity, because you're going to have multiple class files, each one independent, but that will work together.